Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe weekly podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. Our podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to episode 119 of Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. This is episode 6 of our looks at the G.I. Joe Disavowed era, the Devil's Due run. Today we're talking about the two-parter Homecoming from G.I. Joe issues 14 and 15 from Devil's Due / Image in 2003. If you're new to the show, you can head over to our website, talkingjoe.co.uk, to find out all of the details. But without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, it's the real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
I forgot to say hello to them. No, I didn't. Well, I don't know. It was implied. Stop showing me up. And then rounding out our Disavowed crew, it's G.I.J., it's Jay Cordray.
Howdy, wankers. That was some American Western dialect mixed in with some British vulgar slang.
Excellent.
Our regular listeners.
And a howdy wanker to you too.
Yeah.
I thought you were just doing a dreadnought.
I would have added a "God blimey" to it if I was doing a dread. I mean, that was maybe a little more Austin Powers, though.
maybe with InnuenJoe running out or over, there's some kind of dreadnought themed game we could play where we perform dialogue with terrible British accents, or it's like, guess if this is an actual dreadnought line of dialogue or something I heard at this local pub, something like that.
Okay, yeah,
that's a legitimate game there.
Okay, Tim, let's workshop it. You can come up. Is it dreadnought or not a knock? Something like that. Yeah. So I've also gone back to the InnuenJoe. Well, I said that it was going to be the finale. It's not. By popular demand, I have gone back and come up with some more InnuenJoe nonsense. So we'll close
because you demanded it. It's a big cover blurb.
You demanded it.
I meant you as in Mark.
So what happened this week in terms of excitement? There was a major reveal because we saw Major Blood's 6-inch reveal. It was looking quite cool. And sounds like we might see an official release of that before too long. Hopefully the distribution issues will not be too much of a problem. He can be in everyone's hands, but yeah, looking good. One of my favorite characters, Major Blood, I think.
It looks really good without the helmet. It looked a lot like the way he appeared in that Max Brooks miniseries, Hearts and Mine.
Oh right, yep.
You know, with the gray hair and just really, really scruffy looking. But yeah, I mean, at first it was like the day that those images started popping up, it was, people were like, "Is that real? That can't be real. That's not real." And then for like probably easily a day and a half, I was like, that's probably photoshopped. And then somebody posted a real quick little videos, maybe like 10 or 15 seconds, and they actually showed the boxes sitting on a table, and I was like, then no, there's no way that they could. I mean, there is, but nobody'd go to all that trouble. I've looked on like Hasbro Pulse. I can't find anything about it there, but it definitely looks legit.
Yeah, for sure. There was a proper full-on YouTube video review of the figure that someone had lucked out and got their hands on it. So it is certainly out there in the wild. A really good
How do
look
these
at
people
it.
get these things, I wonder?
Well, that YouTuber, apologies, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he said he's got basically his address in his contact details, and it just randomly arrived in the post.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Kind of like Linda Moulton Howe in the Majestic 12 papers. That's for all the fellow conspiracy theorists out there that know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that one, it went over my head.
Look up cattle mutilations and you'll find it.
And Tim's week sounds like it's been a fill up of insulation. Insulation.
My comic book store under renovation took a major step forward. The wood studs, the walls got torn out last year and then rebuilt, but it was still just the studs, and the insulators came and insulated the walls and the ceilings, so it looks like much more of a store, and the renovation has progressed, and I had been waiting. Hopefully something dramatic happens every week, 4 weeks in a row, starting with this past week.
Mm-hmm.
So things have been or felt slow because of permits, supply chain delays, or just because renovation is slow. And there's a speeding up right now, which is very exciting.
And
Good.
do you have an expectation or a hope of when the store will actually be back open?
Not really.
It'll take what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of any week or month I say is going to be wrong, and we'll either either we'll get someone's hopes up and then we won't be ready, or it'll I'll say before that, oh, we're ready after all, and then people will be surprised. So I don't know, but I think we're gonna have some kind of soft reopening, because once all the renovations are actually done and the city has signed off with all of the final inspections, it will then take some time to get the movers to bring all the books back. Mm-hmm. And then my manager and my wife and I will take, 4 days, 2 weeks to actually restock the whole store. And if this was just restocking it as it was, you can switch your brain off a little bit. But we have reconfigured the store, right? So most of the bookcases have come back, but we're going to have some new furniture and some sections will have moved. One section will be a little bigger, one will be a little smaller. And so this requires a lot of, thinking and auditioning. It's if you have a shelf and you're used to, 60 books between like the letters, F and H of the alphabet fitting there, and suddenly that shelf, you have more books or fewer books, or F is now on the previous shelf. There's a lot of just sort of elbow grease and like staring and frowning and thinking and moving.
Hands on hips. Yeah. Soft reopening though. Hopefully there's inflatables involved in that.
Your solution to the F through H problem is quit carrying Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider and just more G.I. Joe.
That's excellent. As for soft, I mean, we do have a significant G.I. Joe section. That's not just some punchline because I'm a G.I. Joe fan or researcher. We really do have the largest G.I. Joe section of any store in the area, and I always look.
Do you have toys and stuff too?
No, we don't carry toys. We have a very small glass case with 2 or 3 like statues that are Marvel or DC related. That's mostly actually a showcase for the sculptures that my manager makes, because he went to school for sculpture. Oh, yeah? And those are actually more sort of to decorate the store and less to sell. But I did place an order for the Snake Eyes movie toys, and I haven't decided if those are for me to buy through the store or for the store to sell.
I guess we'll see when we get them.
I'm just imagining you in the child's cosplay stuff, all geared up now, Tim, sneaking up ninja style on your customers. As
for your soft reopening reference, I'm trying to remember. I know there was a Transformers Generation 2 Optimus Prime bop bag. You know, those inflatable clear bags that you punch and they right themselves.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. Was there one for G.I. Joe? And if so, how many could I get for this soft reopening?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen one of those, but if that does exist, that would be a wonderful thing. Ready to talk some comics?
Yes.
Let's do it.
We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read.
So today we are talking Devil's Due issues 14 and 15. The creative team is Story, Josh Blaylock, Pencils, Kevin Sharp, and Brandon Bado. He's bad, he's bad, he's bado. And inks, John Larter, colours, Hi-Fi Colour Designs, letters, Dreamer Designs, copy edits, Scott Well, graphic design, Mike Norton, and military consultation, Tim Ever. Let's talk covers.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So we have got two covers here, one with a Viper on the front, 14, and one with a photo of the main Joes involved: Mutt, Alpine, Bazooka, and Rock and Roll plus Junkyard. Jay, talk us through your thoughts on these two.
You know, makes me think of the ARAH episode that you guys just did with Alex Sanchez, and Tim didn't like the photo backgrounds in a lot of the sky and the ocean. I feel kind of that way with the Viper. I'm not sure if that's a straight photo or not, but it doesn't look the same as like the Viper itself. It doesn't look like an actual illustration. So right there just kind of throws me. Plus the gun is inaccurate. I mean, the Viper himself looks good.
Yeah, it's not toy accurate, is it? Yeah.
No, it's and how hard is it to find reference for that? Answer, not at all. But it's funny that it says the Ladas on the mailbox. So that one, I don't know. Like I said, I'm totally with Tim in this. I've seen a lot of different things, and even Neil Adams on occasion, will put like a sky with the actual moon, like a photo in a moon of a moon, and it just doesn't look right in a drawn panel or when you try to mix those two things.
I mean, I think this is a drawn house front. It's just very rendered colors.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they did it. It doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't. It's kind of like when we talked about the Baroness cover a while ago, and I think Tim said that she could have been standing in front of anything that the background didn't, or maybe it was the Flint one that the background didn't quite fit.
They're doing these image logos actually in the top left hand corner quite interestingly. That the sort of the eye almost disappears.
Yeah, it's almost a
and it's just got
negative
like a
logo.
little framing around it. It's a nice touch. You get to see more of the actual art underneath. So you mentioned the Latters. For those not in the know, do you want to just clarify what that little Easter egg refers to?
Well, wasn't the actor's name who did Cobra Commander's voice in the Sunbow cartoon Chris Latta?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Cobra Commander.
Good, I'm glad I got that right. I'd have felt like a real idiot if I did.
And Starscream as well.
Yeah.
Transformers.
And cover to number 15, like you said, the photo of Mutt. I'm assuming that's probably the original Junkyard. Rest in peace or rest in field, wherever he is. Alpine, Bazooka, and Rock and Roll. Oh, that's not a bad cover. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's one of those covers, like G.I. Joe 26, the original one with different photographs and stuff on it. It's basically just, well, this is our theme. This is what we're going to do. It's they're good when they work, but they're not ever at this point original or innovative.
Yeah, I mean, it does some, it does what it's trying to do fairly nicely, and sort of show a photo of these
the
four
camaraderie
guys.
of the guys. I think Alpine looks great on that. His pose is really nice, and I like that it gives him, just the fact that he's got his arms draped over the other. It does give you a little more personality of, kind of hint of what his character is like. Rock and Roll looks like he's maybe a little stiffer than he should be, but it's a good drawing.
Do you want to weigh in with some thoughts on these two, Tim?
Yeah, so the cover of 14 is colored by Udon. Udon Entertainment is a studio, which for comics fans is not related to, but sort of analogous to, would like remind you of Dreamwave Productions. So an art collective, right? Also a Canadian studio, like Dreamwave was. Dreamwave was all the guys who did Transformers comics around the same time, and their work was all anime inspired, color particularly, but style and how characters and technology was drawn. And Udon did and continues to do that kind of work. Udon does a lot of Street Fighter comics and art books. So Udon has had some relationships with Marvel and with Devil's Due since 2002 or so. Udon colored a couple issues of when Deadpool was relaunched as Agent X at the end of that character's original run. So what Udon is doing here, these don't quite look like, I wouldn't say necessarily these are colored like how anime is colored or manga is colored. But what's happening in both these covers, and I like that they match in their palette, is that the colors are desaturated, although they're not rendered with an intensity of light sources and a huge difference between the highlights and the shadows. So if you look at the red on Bazooka's shoulder, if you look at the red on the Viper, that's not like Spider-Man red. That's not like Crayola marker red. That's more like brick. That's more like red with gray mixed in, red with brown mixed in, red with purple.
Yeah, it's not pure red.
And then similarly, all the greens on these Joes. That's not like olive drab green for Bazooka or Alpine. And so what that does is it makes these covers quieter. And again, I like that they sort of match, right? It's a pair. You have one bad guy, and there's something nostalgic about this cover, right? Because this cover is supposed to, even if you don't know the title of the story or the theme of the story, this cover is supposed to say something like America, Americana, the suburbs, like the 1950s, two cars in every garage. And this is a 2-car garage, right? Because you can see some on both sides of this Viper. A gnome, a mailbox, a flag, and yet it's a bad guy, right? So the story of this cover is fun and compelling, and it suggests actually what I think of for Crimson Guardsmen, right? Like that's who's supposed to be doing this.
That's kind of what I was just thinking.
So this cover is a little bit confusing because Crimson Guardsmen, they're undercover living sort of out in and amongst regular Americans, and then in their closet there's a CG red uniform. So what this sort of says is either like this house is not subtly Cobra, it is blatantly Cobra, or that this house is under guard, or this is like a base. So I don't think it's confusing that it's like wires are crossed. I think it's asking a question, and I want to read this issue to find out the answer to that question. Unfortunately, it's enough of an exaggeration. Like this scene doesn't really happen. We don't see a Viper like this. So that doesn't happen. But in terms of the idea, this is one of my favorite Devil's Due covers. In terms of the actual drawing, Brown's inking is not all that substantial. The rendering in the background doesn't match. It doesn't fit with the actual drawing and line weight of the character. The gun... it looks like too technical, and then there's sort of there's a soft out of focusness to the background, so that I think that and the rendering are what are saying to Jay like photograph, even though this is not a photo. What What Dreamwave did, and I think what Udon has done in a lot of its comics, is characters and props are penciled and inked. Backgrounds are penciled. And then the colorist goes in and actually doesn't very much darken the pencils of the backgrounds and then can paint it more like an animation background, right? So if you think of how animation looks in, let's say, the 80s, like G.I. Joe and Transformers, you have lines around characters with solid flat color, and then the backgrounds are rendered with, soft edges. As for the cover for 15, I love seeing Joe's having a moment where things are good or relaxed, or they've just, even if they're not relaxed, it's the moment after a battle, but the battle's definitely over. Like, I love the idea that someone would take this photo and that this photo belongs to someone or one of these Joes. There's some tears on the top left of the corner. There's a little bit of a burn, although it's not clear. I guess that's in the sort of like mat or envelope that the photo's in. There are 3 bullets. There's a tab from a soda or beer can. There's a little bit of weird melted silver on the top left of the photo. I'm gonna
1000.
Yes, there's some T1000 liquid molten metal on the top of the photo for some reason. And this
meant to be liquid, obviously.
It's water or beer. We can place this photo because that's not Rock and Roll version 1. That's his 1989 costume. What this cover makes me think of, and the comparison is not quite flattering, is Michael Golden's cover to The Nom, issue number 3 from, I think, late 86 or early 87. So, Michael Golden, who, of course, is known to G.I. Joe comics fans, drew most of the first year of The Nom, which was Marvel's Vietnam comic, and it's definitely not as harsh as that real war was, but for a Comics Code Authority book, approved book, it's great.
Did Larry write that?
Larry was a consulting editor for the first.
Okay, I knew he was involved in some capacity.
2 or 3 years, or he was editor for the first year or two, and then he was editor for the first year or two, and then he was consulting editor as he was on his way out at Marvel. So this cover,
I think he basically put together the team as well. So
yes, thank you.
Recruited both art and writer.
Yes, editor-in-chief Jim Shooter said to Larry, make this book happen, and Larry made it happen. So the cover to The Nom number 3 has 3 of the main characters from that series, a photo of them, and they're mugging for the camera because they've just gotten into trouble. There's booze and a garter, and the photo happens to be on fire, and you get the sense that it's in a hotel, maybe a hotel for prostitutes in Saigon, and the whole building is on fire because everything about the background around this photo is red and orange and brown. And the photo itself, in a very signature Michael Golden move, is all 2 colors. It's all sort of the same purple and pink, even though it's 3 different guys and they're wearing green, but you don't see it as green. There's a story being told here. Not only is it a photo of 3 guys from before having a good time, there's a prop, there's another prop, there's some debris, it's on fire. So when I look at this G.I. Joe cover, I see 3 bullets. Are those the Joe bullets? Are those Cobra bullets? I see popped can from a beer, the lid from the tab from a beer can. The wood under this photo, I think that grain has been drawn in, and then the color artist applied some brown. This photo is just someone's photo, I don't know whose, somewhere I don't know where. So this is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and it's sort of evoking, I guess, the nostalgia of these guys getting together, sort of post G.I. Joe, where they've sort of settled back more to civilian routine, and they're talking about the good old days of being in G.I. Joe and reminiscing and looking at the photos. It also puts me in mind of Hitman by Garth Ennis and John McCree, where they also used sort of those photos of back in the day in service as a bit of a framing device.
There's one last thing I'd like this cover to do differently. Rock and Roll should be much bigger. Rock and Roll's a big dude, and
he looks small there.
He looks like the smallest of these 4 guys here.
You want to talk about a missed opportunity? Cover to number 14. Where's the Cobra symbol on that gnome's hat?
Why? Let's go a step further, Jay. Why is the gnome holding a watering can? Why is the gnome holding some kind of Cobra weapon, like Cobra Commander's laser pistol or Zartan's? I mean, that might ask a question that we can't answer.
He needs a Cobra symbol on the hat, and he needs 2 on one of each of his little red shoes.
I like that both of these covers indirectly refer to what's happening, because we never see this scene in these 2 issues where the Joes, 10 years ago after a battle are like thumbs up for the camera. We see them now, getting back into it, but in a civilian setting, right? They're at a bar.
On back covers, we've got David Michael Beck continuing with his painted back covers. We've got Roadblock this time, blasting away. And on 15, we have got a trio of Crimson Guards around and on these Cobra sort of gargoyles with Cobra flags in the background. Roadblock looking a little bit strange in his body turn, and the Crimson Guards looking somewhat different to my ideal model of them. They're kind of looking a bit more sci-fi and angular, but nice that they're continuing with the back covers. Let's move on into the plot breakdown. Take it away, Jay.
After the skirmish with Cobra and the Dreadnoks in Chicago, Rock and Roll uses some much-needed time to visit a couple former Joes, Alpine and Bazooka. Joining him on his trip are the G.I. Joe team's canine officer, Mutt, and his new puppy, Junkyard Jr. Meeting the former Joes at a bar in Delphi Hills named Old Clyde's, the Joes notice something suspicious. A number of men in black suits walking towards the bar, through the bar towards a back room. When they inquire about the room, the bartender, Old Clyde, tells them there's a private poker game taking place there. Clyde overhears one of the Joes use the name Gung Ho and places a phone call to High Command. Bazooka visits the restroom as the other Joes prepare to leave. Clyde insists they stay for another round of beers on the house. Handing the drinks to Rock and Roll, the savvy Joe notices a Cobra ring on the old man's finger. Suddenly, the bar erupts with Cobra agents and the Joes are taken captive. While Rock and Roll, Alpine, and Mutt are taken to the basement, Bazooka is locked in a storage closet. Cobra Commander arrives to interrogate the Joes. Bazooka escapes and attempts a rescue, but is delayed by the arrival of Big Boa. In the ensuing fight, Bazooka fires a rocket and destroys Cobra Commander's semi-trailer. In the commotion, the other Joes escape. After their retreat, Cobra Commander orders all trace of Cobra be erased from Delphi Hills.
Excellent stuff. So we've got a roll call here of Bazooka, Rock and Roll, Alpine, and Mutt as the lead Joes, and it was nice to see them make an appearance. I've got a fondness for all of those, particularly Mutt is a big favourite of mine, one of my very first figures I ever bought. And it's good to see these guys who are probably sort of the G.I. Joe B list and even into the C list being a bit more front and center, and just spending some time with them and hanging out. And the story itself was simplistic in its approach, very much focused on a single straightforward story of this kind of these guys getting together to reminisce and hang out and sort of stumbling into a Cobra plot in suburbia. What did you think? What did you think of it, Jay? Maybe your reactions first.
Well, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't cover, obviously, in the plot breakdown, because I wanted to try to keep that brief. We did have at the very beginning of the issue, I think it was Rock and Roll was kind of filling Mutt in on what happened in Chicago, and he's telling him, police came and took the Dreadnoks away. We never did see Zartan. Don't know what happened with the Dreadnoks. And then they kind of show you in a panel that it was Zartan disguised as police that was taking the Dreadnoks away. He kind of echoed some of our questions from the last podcast about what was going on with Firefly. Not answered, but repeated them. So it let me know that the creators of the book were aware that there was probably some confusion there. The art in this was much better, I thought, than in the last 2 or 3 issues. I love the way that he draws Junkyard Jr., the little puppy, and then we have a lot of stuff too with Cobra Commander, trying to whip Mindbender into shape again. And I'm not sure if it was this issue or the next one where we have some juggler action. Baroness is kidnapped by somebody. We don't know where that's going to lead. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to like. I like that like you pointed out, that we just focus on the 4 core Joes. It's strange to think. You said maybe even some C-listers. You think about those guys, it's almost like if there's a C-lister among them, it's probably Rock and Roll. Not in terms of the comic book, but just, we've never seen him, I don't think, in any other media. He may have appeared in some of the cartoons, but he certainly wasn't ever spotlighted. Definitely not as much as Mutt was. Mutt was probably a pretty big player in a lot of the cartoons. And of course, Alpine and Bazooka were front and center in a lot of the cartoons. So, but they haven't really been seen since the return.
In terms of the comics, Mutt and Rock and Roll had quite a few
much
appearances.
Bigger players. Yeah. And Rock and Roll still to this day.
And for the other 2, Alpine and Bazooka, very little time in the pages in the comic, but quite big characters in the cartoon. And obviously part of what they're doing in this book is trying to balance the kind of a feeling of the cartoon, but also the comic together, and sort of, recognizing that people are coming to this, and bringing in their nostalgia to it, and not just what was previously in the plot of the Marvel Larry Hama books, but also their memories of the cartoons and their fondness for the toys and the cartoons. I think I might have jumbled up my words then, but yeah,
out there.
Yeah. So sort of a lot of the cartoon sort of history sort of being incorporated almost into the book as well. You mentioned Junkyard Junior, who seems to be has the appearance of a younger dog. It seems to be drawn. It looks to me here like a Rottweiler. We've discussed before about what sort of dog he might be. He sort of appears kind of as different sort of dog in different medias. We've seen him as a Doberman, Rottweiler, Alsatian, and sort of potentially mix of other unknown to be defined dogs.
He's the Mutt, really. And we do have an appearance too by Lillian. Again. Yeah, and it appears that maybe does he say that she's been brainwashed, or she's been
she has been brainwashed,
enjoying the latest brainwashing efforts Dr. Mindman performed on it. Yeah, so she's kind of dazed. Who knows what probably insidious torment Cobra Commander's heaping on her on a regular basis.
Yeah, so he's getting off on being mean to her, and she is, in this subservient, slightly sexed up outfit as well, which we kind of we wondered what Cobra Commander's interest might be in her, and also whether she made a return. And I think and we speculated whether she would make a return, and so it's nice to see that plot aspect hasn't been forgotten or sort of left lingering too long, that we have seen a return of both her serving Cobra Commander, but also Alexander. I think he was on his hands and knees scrubbing the floor for Destro.
Yeah, get that floor clean, Cinderella.
This issue does a good job of alluding to the previous arc and the new status quo of, Cobra is back, G.I. Joe is back, but also time has passed, and, the teams are, back sort of as organizations, but also sort of how well equipped and populated they are, while also telling a core story over 2 issues of, these 4 Joes getting in trouble in a small town, and also doing a little light reminiscing. So I like overall. I like these 2 issues. There's a focus to it. The art is. I'll be honest. I guess I can tell the difference between Kevin Sharp's pencils. Looks like he's doing the first, half the issue for 14, and then Brandon Beto takes over and does the second half. Beto's characters are all a little beefier. particularly his bazooka. And there is a, this word's going to sound wrong, but there's sort of an articulation to how he draws like clothing folds and hair, and how he sets that up. It's a little bit busier, and it reminds me a little bit of Bart Sears, although Badeau went to SCAD. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design. SCAD is the only undergraduate, or maybe at the time, only undergraduate program, accredited undergraduate comics program in America, where you can go to school not for illustration and happen to make comics, or fine arts and happen to make comics, but a comics program. You can graduate with a degree in comics. And I think he's a good fit for G.I. Joe, although once the fighting starts happening in the second half of issue 14, sort of everyone looks like a giant football player. And whereas on the cover to 15, I want rock and roll to be bigger. Actually, kind of in a Bart Sears way, everyone, all these like generic civilian disguised Cobra bad guys and these four Joes, they all just look huge, which is a little bit much.
Escape from a He-Man cartoon.
Also, while I like the plot point that the Joes notice this Cobra ring on the bartender, and we see the Cobra ring earlier when he's making it's a phone call, right? Or he holds up a beverage. I'm a little torn because I know we have some in jokes, right? Like Arbco, Cobra's shipping company is just an anagram of the word Cobra, like, Broca Beach in New Jersey, that's just an anagram of Cobra. Like, that's the comic having fun with us and winking, right? Because it would never be that obvious in the real world. And I don't know, I like the visual storytelling of a Joe seeing a Cobra ring and knowing that something is wrong, but also, like, wouldn't Cobra be more careful than that? There, in terms of sort of references to the comic, on page 15, a small old man with a big white mustache in overalls, sort of the odd man out in this bar, right? Like, he's not a big beefy linebacker, Joe or Cobra, and he's holding a squeegee, like for cleaning windows. So all of a sudden, you don't see him enter, but he's just standing there. And he says, "I'm here to be viping your windows. Where do I start?" And the bartender says, "Sure, just a second, Vinny. That'll be 25 plus tax. I'll go ring you up," he says to the Joes. So this is a very cute, not hilarious reference to an episode of the show from 1985 called The Viper is Coming, which just redoes an old comedy bit from, I forget, Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers or something, where in this episode, the Joes actually are having some R&R. They're all hanging out, and barbecue is going to make them food. And they get this phone call from someone with an accent, and he says, "The Viper is coming." And he gives them some numbers. And then, so over 2 or 3 scenes, different squads of Joes go to different places around the world thinking that those numbers are coordinates, and they find Cobra bases, and they take them out. And at the end, the Joes are all armed up and surrounding barbecues. I think it's his house, sort of in the city, and the Joes are ready for this big Cobra assault. And this little man with a white mustache and glasses and a little pushcart shows up, and he says, "I'm the Viper. I've come to vipe your windows. I charge $5.75 an hour. I start on left corner, top floor," something like that. And he's sort of restating all of his oblique number references from these 3 phone calls, which was sort of his rate and like where he starts on the building. And the Joes all laugh, and it's a fun, great episode. So here's this character specifically pulled from an episode of the show, but the joke's already been done. So having him here sort of sets up like it's going to tell the joke again, and yet at the end he's actually like one more Cobra, and he like helps knock out one of the Joes.
Right.
I don't, I said before, I think like pulling in extensive enterprises and how Tomex and Zaymot speak from the cartoon, I like that. I think having certain camaraderie from the show, which we never saw in the comic, like Alpine and Bazooka, that's fun. This one seems overly cute and distracting.
Yeah, a little bit crowbarred in. Like, hey, you remember that guy from the cartoon? Well, there he is. He's here. You know,
Yeah, and like you said at the end, he turns out to be a Cobra after all.
Right. And sorry, when I was starting about the ring that's on the bartender. When he calls it in, I need to talk to the high command, and then we see the ring on his finger reflected in Roblox's glasses. That's good visual storytelling. I like that. The Cobra logo on the ring is never actually drawn well, and that might seem like a little nitpick, like, Tim, it's a very small thing on a very small thing. Like, cut him some slack. Like, no, the Cobra logo has to be drawn perfectly when it is a plot point.
Harsh. I don't know. It doesn't seem badly drawn to me. It's you've got to be paying a little bit of attention.
Well, that's the thing, Mark. You have to really be paying attention, right? It's you can. I mean, as the reader, right? Like, there's a blue thing on this guy's finger and sort of a red thing that resembles a Cobra logo, and I know what it is. But I think if I gave this to my cousin or my neighbor, and they don't follow G.I. Joe at all, they wouldn't pick up on that plot point.
I didn't catch it in his glasses, the reflection in Rock and Roll's glasses,
which either shows that
you just said it.
Okay, so Jay, either you're reading it a little fast or a little distracted, or it's not drawn clearly enough.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Like issue 1 when Kamakura hands Snake Eyes the data disc or something, and you just barely see Kamakura's hand in the corner of the panel. I mean, it's just, it's not there, and that's the main focus of the panel should be, is like, here's this guy's handing somebody something else, and this it's just like hidden in there,
it's spelt out with quite a lot of repetition. We see the ring at least 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then in dialogue it's reinforced as well that this guy's Cobra wearing a ring right in front of us, displaying it as a trophy. So it is clearly signaled to the reader. So I think we can't quibble too much about that.
But is it said in the dialogue because it's not clear enough in the art? Does the dialogue have to clean up good storytelling that's not like excellent, perfect storytelling? Can I shift gears to something else that didn't quite work for me?
Na 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 na.
Here come the nitpicker,
Timmy Finn,
analytical prankster,
Timmy Finn,
picking holes in your colouring,
Timmy Finn,
still love G.I. Joe,
Timmy Finn.
No, he won't lie. Yes, he
Testify.
Anyone can see there's some
Criticism.
Anything that
He don't know.
ain't a thing that's worth to know. Pull him back and let him go. Criticism. Here come the nitpicker,
Timmy Finn,
analytical prankster,
Timmy Finn,
picking holes in your colouring,
Timmy Finn,
still love G.I. Joe.
Timmy Finn.
This is very small. I have spoken before about lettering in Devil's Due, and this one, I don't know if it's sort of lettering or scripting. But okay, before I call up the example, I just want to set up a comparison. Sometimes while recording this podcast, I might need to cough, and so I will mute this mic, and then I'll I'll cough. Okay, so end of example. What I just did there was I used a word, C-O-U-G-H. That's the word, cough. Also, then I coughed. And in comics, one of those would be spelled out, and one of those would be either a sound effect or those 5 letters, C-O-U-G-H, with like little lines on either side. Like if you're texting it to your friend, you'd put like an asterisk on either side of the word cough. One is a word spoken, the other is a sound. On page 3, in the final panel, Rock and Roll and Mutt are going up the stairs to this bar, and Rock and Roll says this word that I don't understand what it is, and it's K-M-P-H exclamation mark, and then the word snicker, right? So if he's snickering, like that needs to be in italics, or it needs to have like little like effect lines around it. I don't mean like a giant bubble letter yellow sound effect like blam. This can be in a word balloon. So I actually don't. I think he's like guffawing, or I think he's like TSK, like, oh, I think he's making a sound like this, right? And then Mutt says, "What? You got a problem with a man showing some love to his dog?" And then Rock and Roll says, "I don't know how to say this word. KKKMPH, right? Kmph. Kmph." I think he's incredulously and sarcastically guffawing to his friend. And I know it seems like I'm nitpicking. Like, Tim, you're spending 2 minutes on one word, in one word balloon, on one panel, on one page. But in comics are really hard to make. And to make excellent comics, you have to be able to do like 32 things adequately, or even better, well. And that's like lettering and how you treat... Because in comics, like, lettering is part of the art, and this is all a visual language. So this distracted me and confused me, and I don't want to be pulled out of the story. This isn't like, Josh Blaylock, you're fired. This is like, I don't get it. Oh well, I have to figure it out. Okay, I'm gonna go back to reading the story.
Now I'm just spotting this sort of thing throughout the entire book. I'm seeing Bazooka, N-U-H, H-U-H, and then later on, N-H-N-H. Then we've got Mindbender saying ahem in inverted commas. We've got Baroness saying gasp, G-A-S-P. Later on, we have Cobra Commander saying sigh.
The door in the limousine should probably be click instead of lock.
True.
So, okay, so some of these, your mileage may vary. Some of these, to me, don't read like errors. And lock versus click, like, you could be sort of cheeky with the sound effect of a door locking, and it could be like lock, which is L-O-C-K, right? Like, you know, they're all the different words and made up sounds for explosions or guns firing or guns clicking, right? So this isn't like all of these are wrong or all of these are bad. And I don't just see this in Devil's Due. I see this sometimes in Marvel Comics where someone's saying the word cough, but they should be coughing. Because I'm enjoying these two Joes catching up, and because, like, I baby talk my cats, so here's a Joe baby talking his dog. So I'm really into this moment. And then Roadblock says these weird two sounds, and I'm like, I'm out of it.
A couple more observations from me. We've got the Joes calling themselves by their first name. So we've got Dave and Craig, which I think is Bazooka and Rock and Roll. They still call Mutt, which I like that fact that he is still his code name, still very much a Mutt. I'm generally, because we never really saw it in the original Hammer run. Whenever I see kind of the Joes calling them by their first names, it always seems a little bit off to me, but I can definitely live with that, you know, particularly if there isn't an implied knowledge that you'll remember all of the file card names of every single Joe, which my knowledge isn't there yet. And the other one was, Brandon Brado, you were talking about, Tim. Yeah, sort of very interesting style. I think generally, I do like it. It comes across very professional and slick. I find the way that he draws Crimson Guards very interesting and unique. The way that I think you kind of mentioned this as well, that there's this interesting folds going on in their outfit, and again, maybe it's not completely on model the way that everyone would draw it, or the way the file card looks, but yeah, it's an interesting take and interpretation. And even his kind of take on Cobra Commander, again, lots of ornateness and details and clips and buckles and textures going on there, and again, the folds in his uniforms, but particularly striking about him is the size of the holes in his hood.
I was going to say something about that. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't know that I like it or dislike it as a definitive take. I don't think I would want it to be there, but as a kind of one-off, seeing a different interpretation, I think there's room to see it as a different. But yeah, they are big slots, and they go almost all the way down to the bottom of his nose, so we see a lot of that top cheek action.
Here, let me point out one more storytelling, a character thing and a storytelling thing. couple pages into 14, Cobra Commander is upset about the last story arc, and he is yelling at Dr. Mindbender, and Mindbender's taking it. And I like this scene. And Cobra Commander says, hear me now, Dr. Mindbender. You're going to find out where the bat is, and you're going to help find out how Firefly knew of its existence, how he took control, and where he took it. And after that, you're going to help find out who he's working for. Who else wants the bat technology? Another terrorist organization? The division of the U.S. government? I want answers. And then Mindbender meekly, politely says, yes. Dr. Mindbender, in sort of every version of G.I. Joe, becomes the sort of main Cobra technologist, and occasionally he's actually fulfilling his primary function from the toy line, which is Cobra Interrogator, right? I hope I'm remembering this correctly. He ends up being like catch-all Cobra mad scientist and inventor, and some of that is what like Destro and Mars and Scrap Iron should be doing. So I feel like this scene, it's a little bit off because Cobra Commander has a lot of, he has spies, he has Zartan, he has the network of Dreadnoks, he has intelligence, like the Baroness, he has inventors and people who equip him, Destro. And, if the scene is to show that he's just impatient and he needs to yell at someone, Mindbender can be his punching bag. But reading these two word balloons, this like laundry list of things, like I think only half of those are Mindbender's job. And certainly Mindbender can delegate. But I'm always interested in writers of G.I. Joe stories using the various capabilities and organizational structures of G.I. Joe and Cobra, not only like in a novel way, but sort of properly. One more like signature complaint.
To be fair on that, they sort of that in that arc, Dr. Mindbender was kind of positioned as the architect lead on this Bat project.
That's fair.
So it was him that was overseeing this thing that went disastrously wrong. So yeah, he should cop the blame for it.
I think that they've kind of positioned him really almost as a number 2. He's just a step down from Cobra Commander. And yeah, a lot of that stuff is not his direct control, but it feels like, Cobra Commander would tell him to do anything, and then Mindbender delegates that further down the line.
And we do see this nowadays in A Real American Hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mindbender is most often
he's
the
always
person
with him.
The Cobra Commander's talking to. On the final page of issue 14, part 1 of 2, I love the reveal, by the way. The second to last page, where everyone else who is in this bar, including the characters who don't look like big dudes who could be bad guys, but like that lady, that other lady, the woman, the larger woman with a cane, the little kid. So there's this reveal where they all have weapons and they're all about to take the Joes prisoner. Bazooka has exited the scene temporarily to relieve himself. So on the final page, the sort of pandemonium of this reveal is calming down, and the Joes are outnumbered. And one of the bad guys says, "Drop it, punk. You think we care if you take the old man out?" Because Rock and Roll has a gun to the bartender's head. And the big lady with the cane and the pistol, she's turning back towards the reader, and she's pointing her gun, and there's a sound effect that says flush, and she says, "What's that?" And then in the next panel, we're looking at Roadblock, and he's standing in front of a hallway, Bazooka. And he's saying, "Oh, sorry, thank you." We're looking at Bazooka, and he's standing with his hands up because he's just walked back into this scene with guns drawn, and he doesn't have a weapon. He says, "Hey guys, guess what So, again, like, sometimes you can tell the story with a couple less words. Like, I have never been in a room where a toilet flushes, like, in a bar, and you hear it down the hallway, and then someone doesn't know what that is and says aloud, "What's that?" So, the little bit of overwriting here.
I want to know what Bazooka's asking him to guess.
Maybe
that's what I saw in the bathroom. It's the world's loudest toilet.
I was sometimes
either someone lost a brown shoe, or I just saw, oh, guys.
Sometimes you're in a restroom and they've put like the newspaper up over the urinals, or there's like a little
Yeah.
TV with the news. I bet it's novel. Like, hey, they've got motion sensor soap dispensers here. So I'm like, oh no, bad guys with guns.
I used to work in a restaurant that had the Wall Street Journal every day, pasted on the wall right by the urinals. So I'd go in there and do what I needed to do, and then I'd be standing there reading an article, and I'm like, dude, get out of here.
So I've only been talking about 14, and I know Mark's talking about these sort of together. I like 15. The story expands a little bit. We get a full page reveal of what these mysterious men in suits were doing once they enter the bar and then go to the basement. Right? They're wearing hoods. They've got the lights are out. They're taking notes. Someone's doing a presentation with a map. Right? So it's like some kind of Cobra conspiracy.
Very like mysterious and Illuminati, and because it's almost like religious robes or something, isn't it?
Yes, because they all have hoods, and there's a little bit of shadow on all of them, so you can't quite see their eyes. This reminds me a little bit of what is actually the final episode of G.I. Joe in the original run, the final episode to air in season 2, before the movie Into Your Tent I Will Silently Creep, which is about a conspiracy within Cobra to depose Serpentor. And there's a little bit of imagery in that episode where there are some sort of regular Cobra characters, but they're in robes, right? They're not wearing like Viper uniforms. A couple pages in, the woman in charge of these bar patrons who are all Cobras, she's referred to as Granny. She sends one of the big guys out because they know that there was a dog, right? And so he's outside. Here, puppy, 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 come here. Come on, puppy, where are you? And there's a big panel of him kneeling down. We can see the car and the bar behind him, and he's holding the leash, and the leash is torn. And he says, and the leash is tied up to a post, but the other end of it is torn. There's no dog, and he says, "Damn." And this is just a good page of story progression and also visual storytelling that pushes forward the narrative that Mutt Jr. may rescue the Joes, or the writer Blaylock is remembering that it wasn't 4 Joes who showed up, it was 5. It was 4 humans and a dog.
And think the payoff of that, right, of eventual payoff of the Junkyard Jr. chewing that is not some doggy heroic rescue attempt, Littlest Hobo or Lassie esque. It seems to be just that he didn't want to be tied up, he wanted to be in the car. And so
yes.
Yeah, I was looking through there for some kind of rescue from Junkyard Jr. and I didn't see it.
But
I was expecting
back
it,
in the
like you
car.
said, Tim.
Mark, thank you for reminding us that is a nice. It's not quite a misdirect, but I think we're so used to well and poorly told versions of this. It's like, oh, the dog's gonna rescue them. It's like, no, the dog might just like go sit in the car because it's hot, or doesn't want to be tied up, wants to like sit on the soft upholstery of the car. Mm-hmm. The next 2 pages after this scene are at Joe headquarters at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Duke is leading a briefing. Lady J sort of debriefs from the previous arc, and then Duke explains the new status quo. This is Duke, not Hawk, right?
Yeah, it's Duke in the green suit.
Okay, right. And he's explaining, it's a lot of dialogue, but it's not too much to read for 2 pages, how the Joes are going to be positioned across 8 sort of undercover bases across the states. And I like this. If you're going to start G.I. Joe up again, whether or not time has passed, I think it's fair to, I don't love all the changes that Devil's Due makes, but here, not having all the Joes, just on Staten Island in New York, or just under the desert in New Mexico. This is fun. This is fine.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like how, like you said, I mean, it's taken him to issue, 15, to kind of set up the new status quo, but I don't think it's bad. I mean, I definitely think it's kind of working into a groove.
And I mean, I don't know if 8 locations is quite sufficient to cover an entire country the size of the US, but certainly more so than just two locations or one location. I also like in this in this sort of briefing that they've got, that they say that they'll be given all of the details on an inverted commas PDF and then deleted in 2 days. Memorize it. Like, what is this mysterious new technology from the future?
Yeah, in 2003, a PDF is such an uncommon format that it needs to be put in quotes. It needs to be offset in quotes.
Yeah.
We have a first appearance of a G.I. Joe toy character from many years earlier making his debut in the comics. And Jay and Mark, I wanted to know what you thought of this character and this scene.
Big Boa?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it worked. Like I said, I didn't read all of the original Marvel run. I kind of dropped out around 110. So I wasn't aware that this was his first appearance. But definitely it works. And I mean, when he appears, you're like, whoa, holy crap. And, you know, it's a pretty good scrap between him and Bazooka. And I do like that it kind of made me think of, in a way, Golden Age X-Men with art by Travis Charest, where he uses lots of little panels on one page to tell the story. And, you know, I've complained before about the camera being too close at times. I think this is just right in most of these shots. I'm really enjoying this artist's work on the book compared to a lot of what we've seen before. His work throughout here, when I was reading it, there were scenes in the basement with the Vipers and stuff. As I was reading it, I was thinking, wow, that looks really good. I was really pleased that I think that the art is getting better, and story's getting better too. I think I'm starting to enjoy it more. Not that I wasn't really enjoying it before, but you know, there were some rough spots.
Yeah, it's definitely picking up a gear, and everything that we've been sort of complaining about before is generally improving. The pacing, you know, how much they're trying to fit in every issue, the amount of words they're trying to fit into a speech bubble or into a page, just the look of the lettering, the look of the coloring. I mean, it's still credited as hi-fi design on these issues, but the coloring is looking better on these issues, and
kind of toning it down a little in some spots.
Like the things that we were talking last time about, those, you know, sort of the light
Metals
sources on
and
every
lights.
single piece of metal, you know, that isn't seen here, and yeah, it's sort of but it's, you know, it's still quite, there's a lot there. There's, you know, like that you're talking to, that the panel with the fighting with Big Boa, that's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, you know, panels on a single page, but it reads well, and then, you know, it's a fast packed action sequence, so it's sort of from panel to panel to panel to panel, you know, that works, and it feels like a big reveal and a big sequence. But, you know, literally Big Boa is on just 2 pages of this entire arc, but it, you know, it feels and reads like a big component of it, so which kind of points to it being handled well, I think.
So his visor, the visor of his helmet, is not just glowing, it's really glowing in the panel, the big reveal panel where we see him. So I think the coloring is not as bad as previous issues, but for me it's still 2003 overdone, kind of bad.
Yeah, this sequence could be toned down a little bit.
So a couple characters in these 2 issues, I think this happens 2 or 3 times in a comic that's not going to have narration, like third person omniscient narrator, and in a comic that's not going to have like X-Men style, it's like just a little rectangle above each person to state their name or their code name, right? Like it's all going to come out in the dialogue. On the second page with Big Boa, he and Bazooka are exchanging hits, and he gets hit, and he says, "That's it. That's all the hits you're getting in on Cobra's main trainer. Sorry, Mark and Jay. This is the last complaint that Talking Joe's resident complainer is going to make about this comic." It's like, no one talks about themselves that way. Like, I don't.
And we'd say you're lying.
I don't refer to myself like by who or what I am in order to explain it to someone who's watching or listening who's not here, right?
Especially you're in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, and then similarly in the second to last panel, Bazooka has he's sort of, it's like he had him in a headlock and he's popped the helmet off. And he says, enough of this helmet. And sort of in the shadow behind him, we can't see Big Boa's head or his face. And then Bazooka uses the helmet to hit Big Boa, right? We Minnesota boys like to play fair. Swack! As he swings the helmet into his face. And I feel like this is sort of like the Viper, the window wiper. There's occasionally in the Devil's Due run, there's, or Roadblock sort of confronting Heavy Duty. This isn't like sour. It isn't mean, but it's this sort of fanish, like dialogue or action that doesn't actually fit in the scene. Like, yes, as a kid, did I wonder what Big Boa looked like? If there was an entire issue that spotlighted him, like his origin, or an issue where he's like training a bunch of new Cobras, or like he goes on a mission and infiltrates the pit or whatever. If there's a plot point that he like never reveals his identity, or he does reveal his identity and his helmet is just, I don't know, armor or like oxygen, like we can tell that story. I'd like to read it, but there's actually no room in this 2-page fight scene for like Blaylock to take a moment to have Bazooka sort of say aloud what some fans of the toy line have always wondered. It's like, what, like, oh, is Big Boa's helmet a big deal? Like, you wouldn't say that. Like if he's punching Cobra Commander and he pulls off Cobra Commander's hood, he might say like, at last we see who you really are. Or like, I've never liked this mask, yank. But it's like, oh, this Cobra we've never met before. It's like not a big deal.
Well, I think he's saying that because in the first 2 panels, I mean, he hits him in the head with the rocket or bazooka or whatever he has, and a normal guy that would have like knocked him out immediately. Yeah. But since he has the helmet on, he's able to take it, and then he hits him again, and it's like it isn't a fair fight for Bazooka because Big Boa has the helmet on, and it's not necessarily a reveal of, hey, what's underneath the helmet. It's more just like, somebody's wearing a jacket or something in a fight, and you're just in no shirt at all. It's like, well,
I see your point. Okay. Yeah. So I'll dial back most of my comment.
That's okay.
I do think in the top 4 panels of this second page, it could be clearer.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's say that instead of like hitting him twice with the bazooka, but you don't actually see it like hit the helmet. You just see it swing past, and then Big Boa is sort of like being pushed away. Let's say it was like fist to helmet, punch, other fist to helmet, punch, fist to helmet, punch. Right. And then he's like, enough of this helmet, and he pulls it off. Or like, I think it could be visually clearer, but I take your point that it is more properly embedded in the moment of the fight and not this like toy thing.
Yeah, the overall mystique. I do kind of like Bazooka's line when the trailer explodes and Big Boa says, Cobra Commander's trailer, and Bazooka's like, that was all you.
Right,
just a little jab.
Because Big Boa punches Bazooka drops his rocket launcher, and it goes off anyway.
And then Big Boa smacks him again, and he's like, I mean, you can just see this happening. A lot of it works. I mean, there's, the bigger chunks of dialogue don't fit, but the pacing, I mean, again, I got to give it to Blaylock for some of his choreography. He does really well.
And that shot of Bazooka firing the bazooka leading up to this sequence on the previous page, I think that looks nice and really works. Of that, the actual bazooka projectile sort of, swirling with the smoke
where he's by the
towards Jeep. Yeah, and it's swirling towards us as the audience, and the Vipers are take cover, and then still got it.
How does the ending work for you guys?
So do you mean in terms of the kind of that last reveal on the very final page? So we've got the Cobras are kind of blown up and they sort of all run away. There's a cleanup crew that from the Joes that come in to try and help, but they don't really discover much that sort of really indicates what's actually gone on in this town. And then there's a family that are moving in, and the boy goes up to the top of the house, and in the roof is in the loft is a Cobra flag and like a Crimson Guard uniform or something. So like, whoa.
Well, 2 things. Tim, were you talking about the fact that basically the Joes run away, or after at the end when Flint or whoever it is like, we've looked all over, we can't find any trace of Cobra. And then the kid walks in the attic and says, oh my gosh, what's all this stuff? I'm like, wow, you Joes really didn't look that hard.
I actually mean sort of both, because when the first arc ended in issue 4, we talked a lot about how too much got crammed in, and with the malfunction arc with the bat, less was happening, and that story felt like 2 or 3 issues stretched out to 4. So we started this episode generally agreeing that sort of a good amount of action and plot progression happens in these 2 issues. And as Mark was saying, Devil's Due is getting, at this point, a year in or a year and a half in, better at juggling everything. So there's sort of 2 endings to this comic, right? There's the fight in the bar with the Joes fleeing, and then Cobra Commander is angry, right? We can't risk the state authorities getting wind of this town's operation. And then there's this sort of epilogue scene where 2 weeks later, an SUV pulls up to a house, 2 parents and a kid, and then it's not very clear from the drawing, but sort of across the street, I guess, from this house is that bar that got destroyed, and the 4 Joes who were in the issue are back with some other characters, including Flint. There's some silhouettes, can't tell who it is, how big the force is. And Flint says, Unit 3, this is Flint. Unless you're uncovering any little miracle clues, wrap things up over there. This investigation is a bust. And then the kid goes up to the attic. So sort of all of it. Does this ending for this arc work? How do you guys feel about it?
I'm fine with it. I mean, it is what it is. I think it's kind of a bit of a trope of the G.I. Joes in terms of them busting Cobras, but Cobra's able to escape, leaving not much of a trace behind, and they're like, ugh, looks like they got away, and we've got no evidence of really what's going on. I mean, you'd think the conclusion of that little boy going up into his loft, finding all of that stuff, would be that he'd probably mentioned it to his parents, and his parents would be, that's not normal. And hey, we've got these military guys across the street who are obviously looking into something strange. Maybe there's a connection. But never mind. It's a Cobra, Crimson Guard thing in the loft. That's what Crimson Guards do. We know that they were in this town, so I'm not really sure what necessarily the grand reveal really implies, other than Cobra was there and now they're not, and they went away in a hurry.
I was kind of surprised by the end of the bar sequence. Like I said, and I mentioned that because Bazooka's fighting with Big Boa. Cobra Commander says, what's going on? They head upstairs. That gives Joe's the opening to escape. And then you go to the next page and they're just running out of the bar, get in the cars, and they haul ass out of there. I was like, aren't they going to beat the Cobras? It was like they just kind of left. They left the Cobras. I mean, I understand they're probably greatly outnumbered, but these are G.I. Joes. I kind of had a problem that they, I don't know, like I said, ran away, it seemed like.
Yeah, I don't think it occurred to me that something about this, the ending of this scene, doesn't work for me until you put it into words, Jay. That this is where either the story could have a third issue where,
yeah,
it's like, I feel like the next scene is these 4 Joes calling headquarters, and it's like, wait, didn't Duke just say that there are now 8 smaller headquarters for the Joes so that they can get, it's something quote, anywhere in America in record time, unquote. And
they totally could have set that up. Yeah.
So, and yet it takes the Joes, it doesn't take them 2 weeks to come back. It takes them 2 weeks to come back and finish their investigation. So maybe they've been going over the town with a fine-tooth comb for 14 days. But I feel like Cobra Commander's here. Like, don't call in an airstrike, but like, call in the big gun. call in the big guns.
Nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to make sure.
The implication of the kind of the scene of the Joes driving away and then Cobra Commander coming out and driving away himself, it kind of implies that Cobra Commander him specifically, but then Cobra generally hightail it pretty smartish immediately after the Joes have escaped, so that they're not going to be there, literally minutes after the Joes have gone. But I think there's probably just one thing that might be missing, which is that potentially, if they'd have shown some of those Vipers and CGs coming out of the bar, shooting at the Joes as they're trying to escape, then maybe there's more peril and there's more kind of there's more reason for them to be running away.
Yeah. So the scene, Mark, you make a good point about, it's like Cobra is always hiding out somewhere, and like the Joes, the rules of the story are that the Joes aren't going to find them all, because if they do, then there's no conflict and it's not fun to read. So yes, I don't think this needs 2 more pages or another issue. I think this needs like 1 more panel or 1 different panel where yes, some Cobras are firing at the Joes as they're leaving, or 1 more piece of dialogue from the Joes as they're leaving, something like, because Bazooka had a rocket launcher in his Jeep, right? That's how he was able to do the damage that he did do. And Alpine has taken a civilian job, so either he carries a pistol or he doesn't, but he doesn't have like all of his gear on him. We have established in A Real American Hero, in the main comic series, that Rock and Roll's car is supposed to have a sidearm in its glove compartment. That's in, I think, issue 89. But I feel like there needs to be 1 more line of dialogue, like why aren't we shooting back? It's like out of ammo, or something like that. There's one last little bit of visual confusion for me in this scene. So the Joes are fleeing, and 2 of them are getting into Rock and Roll's sort of orange, like 78 Camaro, I think that's what it is. And then 2 of them are getting into Bazooka's light blue Jeep. And then we do see these cars are driving away. And there's, on this final panel, as they're fleeing, there's sort of a 3rd car on this page, but it's sort of drawn and colored as if to say, like, not important, right? There's like a tiny bit of a car that's sort of like gray in the background. So you turn the page, and I guess Cobra Commander is coming out the back of the bar, because
I think so.
Okay, so and a CG is saluting him, and Cobra Commander is walking up to a sports car that's like the same orange color as Rock and Roll's car. And I know we saw Rock and Roll's car leaving on the previous page, on the previous panel, but Badeau never pulls the camera back far enough to show Cobra Commander's car in its entirety. We see the top half of the back of it, we see sort of a close-up of the wheel, and then we're looking into the passenger seat with the window down as he's turning to us, and like, G.I. Joe will rue the day. I think from a visual storytelling point, the camera needs to pull back. We need to A, see the whole car, and B, we need to see Cobra Commander actually opening the door and getting into it.
I think, and C, it should not be an orange car.
Yeah, and like, I guess it's an orange sports car. Technically, it's not the same orange. There's more brown in it, whereas the Camaro has a little bit more yellow in it. But it's close enough that, like, of all the cars that Cobra Commander is going to drive in, like, in disguise in this small town, does it need to be that similar to one of the Joe's cars? Like, could we just have? It's like, what if it was a green Ford Focus, right? It's like, or just like a black SUV. Like, could it? Although there's a black SUV on the next page, so I take that back. This is one of those things where, in assembly line comics, the editor, like the person where the buck stops. It's like a comic like this needs like a reader who maybe is the editor or maybe is like a different person to sort of like go over this with a fine-tooth comb and say, like, no, these 2 things are similar and they don't need to be, and it potentially creates confusion. And if you're like doing an issue of Daredevil where like Daredevil's just looking for Elektra, it's like, okay, I got one guy, I got one other character, and they're in New York City, and there are fewer elements, right? And this is a 2-issue story with 4 Joes, and we flash over to the other Joes and the other Cobras and these other Joes in this other base, and they're civilians who are specific characters to this story, but they don't have like particular costumes. We've got a CG, got a first appearance of Big Boa, like, because it's licensed, because it's a team book, because they have vehicles. Like, G.I. Joe is a complicated book to put together, and I think a book this complicated needs like 1 more check, one more editor or fan reader to just make sure that everything is as clear as can be.
Yep. Okie dokie. Let's just cover a couple of things on I Spy.
I spy with my little eye.
Or two. I've got two things on my list. The first one was that we got a little introduction from Destro for the new Hiss tank. So the Cobra Hiss 4 from 2002, which has got this visual cue to it that's a bit different from the others. It's kind of this purple color, but it's also got this front cockpit that kind of lifts up almost into a raised serpent attack position. So again, sort of Devil's Due making a big effort to try and serve as somewhat of an advertisement for the toys that are in the stores. And I have a feeling that we'll see more of that particular Hiss tank in the issues to come. The other observation was from the dialogue from Rock and Roll. So he said, "What about you, Craig? Still rocking and rolling?" He said, "You know it, Al. Been playing with a friend's band, the Chaotix, when I get the chance." His friend's band, the Chaotix, of course, a reference to Larry Hammer's band. So Larry Hammer was guitar and vocals with MD Bright on bass.
And the Chaotix were playing shows in New York in 2003. This was an active band at that time, and rather than me saying like, "This is tacky, don't make a reference to Hama unless you're going to hire him," by this point, Hama's 4-issue Frontline arc has been published, so Devil's Due has paid Hama.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen the Chaotix live, Tim?
No, I met Larry sort of after the band was active, but on Larry's Facebook page, on Larry's YouTube page, he has uploaded many years ago 2 videos of some Chaotix performances at a club in New York with high quality audio. So you can watch Larry Hama singing blues rock with a bunch of cartoonist friends who are all musicians.
Did you guys spot anything else?
I spy that Bazooka has a baseball cap with the logo of the Minnesota Twins on it. And did we see Arbco in an earlier Devil's Due issue? I think we did.
I think we did.
Okay.
But
this Arbco truck, right? This anagram for Cobra from the 80s comics gets a return appearance here.
Okay, and I feel like we've pointed out a few potential errors already. Was there anything else that you guys noticed and wanted to highlight?
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
Well, no, I don't have any errors, or necessarily any I Spies. I was just looking through it again, and I really like this artwork. There's some panels that are rough, that don't work, but overall, it's really, he's a really good artist. There's a lot of just angles that he uses that are, I know are difficult to do. His sense of where shadows fall, a lot of times his character work, his perspective is really good. I'm really, really enjoying this. There's things that we don't, like we said, don't necessarily make sense, like how everybody in the bar is the size of the Incredible Hulk. But there's a lot that's really good. So I'm happy to see art that I can, go through and just stop on, almost any given panel and find something in it that I know as an artist is difficult to do, that he's done and done well.
I do think that Badeau, where he can do close-ups and where there are a couple pages here that feel a little rushed compared to other pages.
Yeah.
But he's a better fit for the book. His storytelling is clear, and he certainly can draw muscles.
Yeah.
Okay, so my error detected is on page 13 of issue 15, part 2 of these 2 parts. There's this nice 2-page scene where Bazooka has been thrown into the walk-in refrigerator. They're out of handcuffs, so they just tie him up with rope. So 9-panel grid. Half of them are silent. Great page. He wakes up and he frees himself. And then in the final panel, Viper opens the door, hearing something is amiss inside. Sticks a gun on him and says, "Nice try." And Bazooka says, "How's it going?" And then, how's it going? And then we cut to outside and the back in the main bar, and the Viper's been punched and is thrown back into the bar, and he lands, and one of the bad guys says, "What the?" And he looks down and he sees one of the pins has been removed from one of these 3 grenades on the Viper's chest. And then we cut back to Bazooka, presumably still back in the refrigerator, although the color behind him is bright yellow, which does not look or feel like the cold, dark refrigerator that he's been in, but hey. And he's holding 2 pins. He says, "Gotcha." And then, boom! So, as we know from A Real American Hero, when you pull the pin on the grenade, I'm not going to get the terms right, but the pin is the little loop that your finger goes in. And then on top of the grenade, there's a little sort of tiny cube thing. And then there's the sort of handle thing. When you pull the pin, those other 2 things fall off. And what you throw, or what you're left with, is just the sort of pineapple. And what we're seeing here on this Viper's chest is the pin has been removed, but those other 2 components of the grenade are still on it. And since Bazooka's got 2 pins, 2 of these 3 grenades, which must be active and about to blow, are drawn as if they did not have their pins removed. And when I was a kid and I was drawing grenades in cool action drawings, I didn't know how they worked, and I would certainly get this wrong. I did get this wrong. But this is one of those things where, G.I. Joe's a military comic, and there's some research that you got to do if you don't have a ground floor of knowledge about how troop formations and who salutes whom and how tanks work, and so. But I guess my no prize is that Mark, you're good at this. I don't have a cute explanation for why this works after all.
Special Cobra grenades.
Okay,
they're not
thank
designed
you.
like normal grenades.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
I have a question. Other than the fact that we need to get Bazooka separate from the other guys story-wise, so that he, is able to initiate some kind of rescue. Was there a reason in story why the Cobras didn't just take him downstairs with the rest of the guys? Why'd they put him in the freezer? They had them all in the main floor of that bar together.
Is it because they've knocked him out and he's so, and he's a big guy? They
don't want to drag him down the stairs.
Yeah, but they're all big guys.
Yeah. Check out that little kid tasing Bazooka while he's already down. Little bastard.
Yeah, Jay, are you suggesting that the story is sort of revealing its inner workings too much, that Bazooka is separated because he's the one who needs to be able to rescue them at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if there was a, why, like I said, why didn't they take him with the rest of them? But like Mark said, maybe it's just because, I don't know.
Because
they're all big.
He was out cold, whereas the other ones were still awake, and they asked them to go down to the basement so they could be interrogated. Yeah, I know.
Those guys in the robes, when they bring them downstairs, what you guys referenced was almost like a religious call. It made me think of, and of course this comes later in publication, but it made me think of the Coil in the Cobra Files, where Serpentor was like a kind of like a Scientology type cult leader, and you had all of these, it was like that. That's what that made me think of.
Yes, that is, yes. Going to my other point about, so Jay brings up that these 2 issues do a lot of legwork in redeeming Bazooka after the funny or unfortunate and embarrassing appearance he makes in the first issue of this series, where he's overweight. He looks like he's, put on 20 years, not just 20 pounds. Not only does he say he's been hitting the gym, does he look in much better shape, but he saves the day. So if, we're not going to see him again in this series for a long time because, the new makeup of G.I. Joe is that we don't always have all the people active or or if it's a crowded book and we just can't see this guy again for a little while, he does so much to sort of like fill up Bazooka fans with Bazooka happiness that if we don't see him for 5 or 10 or 20 issues, it's like, well, we'll always have issue 15.
Yeah, I think it worked. Like I said, the series is getting better. Definitely. The writing's pacing is better. Just overall laying out the story, the world building, the fact that, we see that Cobra is starting to reach its tentacles into mainstream America again. When I read Cobra from IDW, I hadn't ever thought about the idea of like Cobra having other things like a media infiltration or like the religious cult that we see in there, and it was kind of like earlier when we talked about the Joes having different bases all over the place. When you think about it, you go, well, yeah, that makes sense. So the fact that they're kind of building and extending just the larger universe, I think works really well in this.
Okay, so let's get on to ranking this one with a yo-joage. I think this is probably the high watermark of the series so far for me. I think they're doing a lot right. It was enjoyable, breezy, good art, could follow it easily. So yeah, I think it's probably my favorite of the issues we've had so far. I don't know that it would be, in the mix against every single G.I. Joe issue, probably not particularly high, but against these so far, it's doing the job. So I'll go in with this sounds maybe a little bit stingy, but I'll go in with 6.5 because I think we've got room for more to come. So yeah.
I agree with what you said. I think that this is probably the best that we've gotten so far. And like I just said a minute ago, I think that it's really going a long way towards expanding the world and just fleshing things out. The art made a huge difference for me. So, it gives me a lot of hope that, it's getting better and it's hopefully going to get a lot better. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that really like the Devils Do stuff, and I had never read it. So I was eager to get into it. And, we had a rough start, but I think it's going pretty well. I'm giving it a 7.
Okay. And Tim?
5. Yeah, it's good. Color's still ugly. Art's a little wonky. Art is better, but still a little wonky.
Take off 2 for not being on the right paper.
I should have never said that aloud. Yeah, action and choreography are good. Moving along the subplots. There are some storytelling. Like talked about the orange car where Cobra Commander is as he leaves the bar. The sort of reveal with the kid at the end in the attic. A lot of these things are good. Nothing about this issue is like thrilling. Like it's just all capable and good. So 5.
Okay, cool. So I think that's us done with issues 14 and 15. Have we got time to talk about toys, Jay?
Sure.
J is here with a toy no fear, talking G.I. Joe collectibles. It's a favorite figure, let's pull the trigger, 3 3/4 inch or bigger. J.
I kind of had something I've been sitting on ever since we started recording. You talk about wanting to, biting your tongue, keeping something. I got in the mail today, or yesterday actually, finally got my classified Zartan. So, and I waited just for you guys to open it until right now.
All right.
Now, I know this isn't a video, which would be much better.
Wow.
And I'm not going to put this in, I'm not recording this in video.
Do you have your camera? Can we get one still of your hands?
I don't. That's going to be too much to try to do. But I am going to kind of go through Zartan, just character history and stuff while I pull this out. Give me just a second to. That's really noisy. I hate those packages.
No, I think.
Let me go
I
through
think,
the.
I think the noise is good. I think we can. It's like
Okay,
radio.
well,
We can
you know
hear
that
it
it's
along
real
with it.
then. Yeah, I'm definitely taking it out of the package for the first time. And I was excited to get this one. I'd had it on order from Big Bad Toy Store since January, and they keep pushing back the pre-order date. And finally, the other day, I just said, I'm not waiting for this anymore, and jumped on eBay and found one actually for only $5 more than what I was going to pay on Big Bad Toy Store. So I was definitely happy when it came in, and I hoped that it would come in before we recorded today. Like I said, these packages are really noisy, and Mark knows all about that. I don't know if Tim, if you've seen too many videos about the figures. There's tons of YouTube videos where people are gonna show you the figures, so I'm not going to go through a whole lot of that. Like I said, I tend to like to look at the overall history, or at least a little bit of a history of a character, and how the design has progressed over the years. And like I said, you heard me take this out, so I am kind of just looking at this one while I'm also looking at my notes. As we know, Zartan is one of the most popular and recognizable figures from the entire franchise. Now, according to YoJoe.com, between 1984 and 2016, there were at least 23 different versions released in the 3 3/4 to 4-inch scale. He was first released in the third series, which was 1984, and he came with the chameleon swamp skier. Like we all know, that breaks down and kind of becomes part of his disguise. He made his first appearance in the Marvel comic in 25, and immediately became one of the central characters in the series' ongoing narrative. I think it's interesting that they took this character that could have almost been a throwaway and tied him into what became the, I don't know if you'd call it overriding or underlying central theme through the whole story, with the Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes arc, and he became intricately a part of that. So I thought that was really interesting. That like I said, he could have just been a throwaway character under any other writer's hands,
and leading another faction of Cobra as well, in terms of the Dreadnoks as well. So just like we had Destro and Mars and the Iron Grenadiers, we've got
now from Zartan's original 1990 or 1984 file card. And this was really cool how Larry did this. File name unknown, aliases too numerous to list. I always thought that was funny. Zartan can alter his skin at will to blend in with his environment. He's a master of makeup and disguise, a ventriloquist, a linguist, over 20 languages and dialects. Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen him really speak anything other than English in any of the comics. That's something that would have been nice for him to throw in there. An acrobatic contortionist and a practitioner of several mystic martial arts. Very little is known of his background and origins, but most security agencies agree he must have had European military academy training, probably St. Cyr. Psychological profile, this is from the original one. Extreme paranoid schizophrenic, grows into various multiple personalities to such an extent that the original personality becomes buried and forgotten. Most fans know that there was a little bit of controversy when the character first came out, and I'm not sure how long it took him to rewrite that into something that didn't include the words paranoid schizophrenic.
Tim, do you remember on that point what did they do? Did they pull it and redo it, or did they put a sticker? Or
it's a running change.
Yeah,
I
think they just left that part off.
Yeah, they took the couple of words out and just kept making the toy with a slightly changed printed
the
back.
whole line psychological profile, I think in the edited file card, that just wasn't there. Now, as far as the design of the character, of course, the original Zartan wore dark maroon pants and had a cowl of matching color, several pieces of removable body armor. He had a pistol and a backpack that opened up to reveal a mask of a bearded man inside. And the mask, the way that it was made, was really neat. You could stick it on his face, and because of the design of the cowl, it would stay pretty well. Don't know how effective of a design or a disguise that would be, but it worked. Now Tim has talked about iconic elements that make up a character, something that every further variation should have to make it recognizable of the same character. Most of the 23 variations in this scale have a lot of those elements. The cowl, the kind of kiss makeup around his eyes, the armor on the chest, the shoulders and knee pads, and there's subtle differences from version to version. Now, I think I mentioned in one of the earlier episodes that when I got back into G.I. Joe a little less than a year ago, the figures that interested me were some of the more unique variations of different characters. Now, for example, if you compare Zartan version 2 from 1993 to the original 1984 figure, if not for the eye makeup, it's practically a different character. That's really a design I never liked. I never had it. And in 2020, I didn't feel any desire to go back and seek that one out. I didn't like the mohawk or the yellow pants. I didn't think that worked with Zartan. Now, I did find, during that time, I found a couple other ones I liked. Doing research for this segment, I discovered a 2-figure set from 2004 that kind of is interesting. They called it the Zartan Hawk Morphine Set, and it included a Hawk figure, a Zartan figure, and a figure with Hawk's body and Zartan's head. Obviously, the idea being that Zartan is becoming Hawk. Now, that set was only available at the 2004 G.I. Joe convention in Orlando, Florida. So I'm sure if you were to try to find that on eBay, it would probably cost you an arm and a leg. That's not something that I'm interested in searching out. I did get a couple versions of Zartan when I got back into it, ones that I thought were really cool. One was version 17 from the Rise of Cobra toy line in 2009. And what I liked about that was the face sculpt on the figure was perfectly the actor who played Zartan in the movies, Arnold Vosloo. So I thought that was kind of a neat touch. And then there was one from the Pursuit of Cobra line in 2010 that's a totally different take on the character. Now, kind of like the version 2 from 1993, if it weren't for the makeup around his eyes, there really would be no indication that it's Zartan. And in fact, it comes with a falcon. So if they hadn't added that makeup and put Zartan on the package, that could have easily been an updated Raptor. But I thought that was just such a unique look for the character because he's kind of like a desert nomad or something. And when I saw that, I was like, what is the story behind this? Unfortunately, there really wasn't much story behind it, but I did think it was a neat figure, so I picked that one up. Now, as for the classified that I just opened up, this is really, it's really cool. I mean, like I said, I've seen a lot of videos and pictures that people have posted online about how nice and detailed this figure is. Everything is really nicely detailed. His armor, originally the armor was just kind of like Michael Keaton's Batman armor. In the first movie, there wasn't a lot of definition. It was just almost like a rubber bodysuit. And in a way, that's what the original armor was. There wasn't a lot of definition on it. It was just kind of a solid molded piece. This one is kind of, makes me think of when we talked about over designing the costumes. Tim mentioned the Captain America costume from the Marvel movies and how there's just seams and stuff on there that they don't need it. This also has a lot of seams and lines, but it doesn't seem like it's too much. I don't look at it and think, wow, this is an over-designed figure. And I think a large part of that is there's not a lot of color variation. Like there's a couple different variations on his armor on the chest and, the piece that he wears around there, but there's nothing that really jumps out at you. So the definition is there, but it's subtle. Shoulder pads don't go all the way down to his elbows like they did with the original. They're more kind of almost like a football player's shoulder pad. And they're kind of a soft rubber, so they do have some give to them that would allow for more movement of the arm if you were a person that, used your figures to take photos or something like that. I don't. I just kind of set them on the shelf and look at them. His legs are really nicely sculpted. There is some seam work on the pants, which is nice. His shin guards and stuff look a lot like the Joes do. There's a lot of really angular design elements there, but again, it's not highlighted by adding too many colors. Like an issue I had with the first version of Scarlet, she had all this line work and detail work in her armor and stuff, and they just put color in all these different spots, and it kind of just, I don't know. It was almost over designed in a way, and if you keep that stuff subtle, I think it works better, and that's why the repaint of Scarlet works better, I think. But this one too is there's not a lot of there's no garish elements, and there wasn't with the original Zartan either. Yeah, this is really nice. His cowl has a lot of detail and texture on it. He's got kind of a weird look on his face. Zartan was always a character that I never really could figure out, how old is he supposed to be? You kind of assumed that he was around the same age as the rest of them, probably in their 30s or so. But you don't know. It's kind of like Mystique in the X-Men. I think she got older as the series got on, and I don't mean older in that the series is getting older. I mean, they started to say, oh, well, she's been around forever because she can change her appearance. Maybe she's an old woman. So yeah, Zartan, if you go back to, he's physically able to change his appearance. Who knows? His face here kind of looks older. He's got like a really just kind of a wicked sly grin on his face. Yeah, this is a really awesome figure. Let me look at some of his accessories. And like I said, I don't use the backpacks and stuff for the most part with the figures. I just put them on the shelf, and some of the backpacks tend to not stay very well.
I was going to say what I like is kind of how they're quite faithful to the kind of the iconic V1 look, but then they're sort of they're modernizing it and sort of putting in these extra textures that you can include with today's manufacturing techniques, and also
and I
can be
think
absorbed by this bigger scale, and sort of they're kind of recreating some quite iconic elements, like kind of that laser pistol that he's got, and
his pistol looks exactly the same. That's something that really impressed me. I complained about Roadblock having the big idiot gun, and some of the other ones having the Nerf guns that just don't look right. But Zartan's original pistol that he came with was not based on anything that exists, I don't think. So this one is it's not exactly like it, but it looks enough like it that, like you said, it just looks like a larger, slightly more detailed version. And I think it's even neat that, like I mentioned in describing the original character, the mask that he had was a guy with a beard. And that's basically what this is. You pull the mask out. It doesn't have a beard. He has a mustache and like a little, I think they call it a soul patch or something like that right underneath his lip. But, it's just a nod to the original that they didn't need to include. They just kind of did that. I feel like out of, I don't know what you call it, respect to the original and wanting to stay accurate.
I think the cool geek factor of replicating some of those cool moments that plumbing into that nostalgia, rich nostalgia vein that you have by pulling in some of those key elements while still sort of keeping it fresh and putting in some new elements there, like his neckerchief and like this monkey hand and snake thing that he can adorn his belt or backpack with.
Do you have this figure, Mark?
Yeah, I got this one.
Oh, I didn't know you had it.
A week ago.
Oh, cool. Yeah, what I like about it too, and I mentioned this when we were briefly discussing Flint and Lady J, from the photos that we've seen of them, it seems almost like the further on the line goes, the more they are trying to be more faithful to the original designs. So yeah, I really like this figure. I think it's going to be really cool. And I kind of like too that, they could have done like with the Baroness, they released her as the Target exclusive with the bike. And, I think I mentioned in another podcast, I didn't even take the bike out of the package. It's not something that interests me. They could have probably made Zartan with some version of a swamp skier, but 99% of the time as a kid, when I was doing something with Zartan, it wasn't involving the swamp skier. When he was in the comics, he used that a few times and then that was it. There's some other Joes that are vehicle drivers that we might talk about soon that are kind of the same way. After a while, they become detached almost from their vehicles. Clutch is a good example. You see Clutch a lot. You continue to see Clutch throughout the series, but you don't necessarily see the Vamp a lot. But yeah, this is a really neat figure. Definitely for toy collectors or for people that are into just picking out iconic characters, this would be one I would recommend. But no, like I said, when I started to get these, I had no intention of getting every figure, and I still don't necessarily feel like I have to have every one. But, you know, I was kind of like, well, I'm only going to get the ones that I think look really cool. And
But they all
definitely
look really
this
cool.
would fall into that category. What'd you say?
I'm only going to get the ones that look really cool, but they all look really cool.
Well, we haven't seen that barbecue yet. Like I said, when you know, when it comes to do I really need the Joe firefighter? I'm thinking probably not.
Okay, does it pass the barbecue test?
But yeah, this one I definitely recommend. I think it's a great figure. It's a great design. And he you know, he's just kind of a sturdy, almost like that beachhead figure. There's just a stoutness. I think Tim mentioned one time he talked about how the original ARAH line, you know, even though they were military figures, there was almost a softness to their features. They kind of had a cute quality or a charming quality. And these figures don't have that. What I would more say about these figures is the ones that work tend to be ones that feel like a really solid piece. You know, people argue between what they like better, the O-rings or like the modern construction figures. To me, there was something about those O-ring figures. They seemed pretty sturdy, and even ones like Mindbender that, you know, you look at and you think that's a goofy design, you know, or Hardball or Bazooka. These guys are going to go into battle in a red t-shirt. I mean, seriously. But the figure was built well. The construction was good, and they were sturdy. I mean, we sometimes played rough with those toys, and a lot of them still are intact 40 years later. And it speaks to the construction of the toys. I don't know that if we had toys that were built like the modern construction figures and we abused them the way that we did some of those older ones, that they'd still be around. But the classified ones to me are more, like I said, they're more something that's going to go up on the shelf and just kind of to look at. They're not really to play with, but they're little they're the little statues. You know, is the way I look at a lot of these figures, and yeah, it's really cool. Highly recommend.
I do not have this big new Zartan in front of me, but the pictures that I've seen,
and all those people take better pictures than I do. So,
you know, my general reaction to this classified line is that it's exciting to see these characters bigger and with more detail, and where the figures reference sort of a favorite figure from the 80s or 90s. I appreciate that, and all of them are 20% over detailed. Like, you know, all the like shin
I could probably
guards,
agree with that.
all the shin guards and the knees, you know, which is, you know, but I've already talked about this, you know, on the podcast, like the, you know, Captain America costume from the last 10 years of Marvel movies, you know, like it's enough to just have straight up and down red and white stripes on Captain America's abdomen. But in the movie costume, you know, it's these like octagonal ridges that sort of taper and get thicker and thinner, and, you know, sort of ends up looking sort of like tech or like athletic gear. But, you know, this isn't just Marvel. This isn't just G.I. Joe. Like, I find a lot of costume design, Hollywood production design, video game design, toy design. I don't mean toy sculpting. I mean the choices in design, you know, about 25% overdone. But I do like this Zartan, and I'm very happy for all the fans who finally get, you know, like a big, awesome Zartan.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, so let's move on to the next segment, which is InnuenJoe.
Attention. At this moment, you are now listening to
Talking InnuenJoe.
If you are offended by words like
Sucking, flesh wound. Willy, Pete. Balls, crystal balls. Hypno shield.
whatever, take the tape out now. This is not a pop album. And by the way, suck my
Grandmother's
mother...
brick in a Prada handbag.
So last time I kind of hinted that I'd run out of names, and that was going to be at the grand finale of InnuenJoe. But I did go back and I put on an even more juvenile hat, which had a little spinning thing at the top of it, and that made me go, yeah, I can see some of these things.
Your little beanie.
Yeah, okay. fitting the definition of InnuenJoe, and that definition being that if you're in the right frame of mind, a lot of G.I. Joe names can sound a bit dirty, and dirty enough perhaps that if I give you a list of a few names and get to the end of that list without making you titter, yes, that's right, titter, then you will have some sort of small victory. So I think to make the things fair and to extend the amount of time I can eke this out for, we'll make a target of 5 names that I have to get to. And before I just start,
It keeps changing the goalpost on it.
I'm making it easier for you to win here. So
we've gotten so much fan mail, email, internet comments that this is people's favorite segment of Talking Joe, and I wanted Mark to, cutting it from 10 to 5, anything to keep it going longer.
We were inundated by compliment.
Compliment?
That's right. You heard. So yeah.
You tipped your hand there, I think.
Right. So before I start my list, I'll just casually mention a little story that I heard about a guy who was at the urinal, and his accuracy wasn't particularly good, and he ended up landing on the floor in a puddle of something. So I'm just mentioning this story casually, and then I'll just start my list. Okay, let's go. Slipstream. Oh dear, my devious plan paid off.
There we go.
And I'll actually tip my hat to Chris Diagnostic 80 McLeod for that one, who actually, when he was talking about the most recent G.I. Joe issue 279, said that Slipstream put him in mind of someone who was not necessarily having the most accurate aiming. So yes, I'm not talking about the aiming of his conquest, unless that's what he calls it.
Wow.
Okay, so on that bombshell, I think we'll wrap up. Join us next time in 2 weeks, where we will be talking about Devil's Due issue 16, just a one-parter next time, The Family, and then back here in a 1 week's time, hopefully we will be covering ARAH 280, bespectacled, beautiful, brilliant, bombastic, beware, the Baroness bewitches in the final untold tale from living legend Larry Hama alongside returning G.I. Joe artist Ron Joseph. You can find us in all of the usual places, talkingjoe.co.uk. The website has them all. We've got a Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram, and a YouTube channel where you can find all of our podcasts, well, all of our most recent podcasts in video format with accompanying graphical illustrations of what we're talking about. You can contact us on email and support us on Patreon, like our backers, Richard, Sam, and Jay, who are all getting early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. So head on over to patreon.com/talkingjoe to donate whatever you feel like, and join up and sign up and get that good stuff. Where can people find you guys? G.I.J. can be found at Facebook.
Break Room Sketches.
Check out the likes of his up-to-the-minute etchings of the G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie version of Scarlet. And
I haven't really done anything for a couple of weeks. It's been just busy with a lot of other stuff. I feel bad. Letting people down.
The drawings are there.
I still owe you, Jay, colors on your Zartan drawing from a month ago. That's on my to-do list.
And A Real American Tim can be found at A Real American Book. Is that right?
Yes. Instagram, Facebook, and arealamericanbook.com.
Excellent. So I think that's us all said and done. And I assume that you can actually catch us down the road.
Because we've been Talking Joe.
And we're all out of Joes.
Laters.
Wankers.